Greetings and welcome to another D&D recap, or in this case more of a post-cap because the game just wrapped up a couple hours ago. I had to run do some shopping. I'm going to try to do the recap before I forget every detail, but I won't promise that I haven't forgotten a lot of them, including certain names. It happens. Alright, this is for session 32 of game E of Mor Massa. Said this game's been going on for 6 years and is on game E. Yeah, it's that sort of a game. Today was that sort of days. Not a huge amount of player action happened today, mostly dealing with large-scale battles, which our DM kind of skimmed over a little bit for the sake of his own sanity, which is that he's been running this game for 6 years. He deserves a break when he can catch one. We opened up after sorting out the forces moving onto the east of the city, where the eastern gate had been knocked down by an aspect of the evil deity known as the Lord. The Gertis Hall elements of the Gertis Hall troops that had allied themselves with the city had been dropped off to the east already, and the remaining members of the Band of Blades were marshalling on that side as well, placing the Gurds on the eastern front, while the Quinn and the Sojourner ferried the allied Storm Giant forces, and they assembled to form our northern flank. It was only a very rough plan of battle, which involved us marching east, running into a bunch of demons, then running the hell north into the Devils and hopefully getting the two to fight each other while we burned the Devils' airships and escaped. Simple plan. What could go wrong? We'll get to that in a minute. Meanwhile, High Defender Magnus Tygard was off doing his plottings after having acquired a Ring of 3 Wishes. Proceeded to make a few wishes to help with his deal with and to screw over the Devils, which involved a pair of wishes. The first was that the evil deity, who's, like I said, I've already forgotten the name of this evil half-dragon deity that he's been dealing with, who had previously taken his soul when he had died to a fireball some time back. Yep, I'm not going to remember that name. Sorry, someone will have to fill that in. He basically wishes that all his suggestions and ideas will be taken as being very good to this evil deity. He wished that he will believe whatever lies Magnus feeds him as being in his best interests. Pretty clever, I'd say. And I cannot friggin' remember what his second wish was. Again, it was along the lines of basically screwing over the Devils. I just fucking fail. I cannot remember his other wish. I'm sure we'll move on. I'm sure it will come to me. Classic Magnus Tygard right there. Absolutely classic. But man, that's going to bug me not remember that off the top of my head. At any rate, he proceeds to ride separately to meet up with the Devils in the Duntier Woods. Meanwhile, Alegna goes along, meets up with the rest of the forces, where she uses her magical headband to set up telepathic communication amongst almost everyone. I believe Thane is the only one that's only player character that's been excluded, which, 7, and the game's not meant for this many PCs, but we make it work somehow. We get organized and march east. Kaj The Wereporpoise is sent in charge of a couple of scout units, about 24 cavalry from the Band of Blades. They charge on east, relatively quickly cover about 3 miles to a small town of Solace, one of the many abandoned hamlets that are circling around Tenola's Hilt, aka White Rush, aka the city we're trying to save. He quickly spots a large 9-foot vulture-type creature dragging a screaming woman. He initially is not going to engage it, but of course the cavalry charge on in. Kaj being Kaj, she wins initiative, charges in, does a fair amount of damage against this creature, and is unfazed by its attacks. The cavalry arrive, because he can outrun charging cavalry. They come up, do absolutely nothing to this creature, being simply NPCs, warriors and whatnot. They manage not to die automatically, but Kaj detects with his blind sense a whole horde of creatures not far away, as a large ape-like creature with underly-sized wings flies over. Kaj beats it and calls for the rest of the men to fall back with him. The ones who survive do, which is not all of them, which is why we only sent out 24. They march on. They run the heck back towards us. Alegna telepathically checks in with Kaj, who's been gone for something like half an hour at this point. He basically says, running, 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 demons coming, running! Because Kaj is a very strong character, has like a 50 AC and high amounts of damage reduction, but he's not the type to stand and fight an army of demons, which makes him more intelligent than most of us. We see him crest the hill, and Tasmia calls for the army to draw up lines, set up the cavalry for the charge, and ready archers for when these things come over the hill that Kaj just came over. He gets back, and we see a whole horde of demons, which is, ironically, what we were looking for. We found. They run forward, our cavalry charges out to meet them, the archers loose a volley. Then all of a sudden, from the south comes the Nightmare Hound. The demons running from the Nightmare Hound towards us. It's always something. It was a simple plan. Fortunately, the demon horde kind of breaks up at this point. About a third of them running north away from this Nightmare Hound, which is, by the way, based on the Tarask, which tells you just how scary this freaking thing is, which is extremely. A third of them run north, a third of them charge at our position, and the other third run and attempt to attack the Nightmare Hound, which does distract it from coming and eating us, thankfully. We deal with the initial wave of cavalry that hits our position, and then begin our slow, tedious, and very high casualty retreat to the northeast, moving towards the forest, now that we have officially attracted a horde of demons, as well as the Nightmare Hound. Demons we were looking for, not so much the Nightmare Hound. But you take what we can get. The plan is to run it north and use it to assault the devils, because it doesn't care. It's a pure personification of hate, rage, and destruction. So it'll go along swimmingly, I'm sure. Along the retreat, the Girds, being dwarves, can't keep up and are eventually fall behind and are overwhelmed. But in a battle like this, losses are to be expected, And frankly, they were all traitors who were going to have their beards shaven after the battle and essentially live as subservients to the main Stoneforge clan for an unknown time until their families managed to restore their honor. So going out fighting was not the worst way out for them, but I'm sure it wasn't a pretty death. We managed to slowly make our way to the northeast. Meanwhile, Magnus has by this point arrived at the lair of Baraxis, the aforementioned deity. He arrives and informs him that he has been unable to acquire the Storm Orchid for him because of a traitor in his ranks. He gesture indicates the queen, and she has a long and storied history. To sum it up succinctly, she is a very old, very nasty vampiric blue dragon, I believe, who massively screwed the party over long ago, including tricking Magnus into wishing for death and turning one of his companions into a vampire who proceeded to screw us over for a long, long period of time. It's another thing that came up in the last session is this character, Blargare. I hope I'm saying this right. I always get his name wrong, too. Arrived in town revealing to be completely human and been redeemed by Quinn in the time skip between games D&E. But that's a minor point at this rate. Denying Tasmia her revenge of crushing his skull in. Oh well, bigger issues to fry. Through cunning and thanks to that wish he had made, Magnus manages to convince Baraxis that the Queen is indeed the traitor responsible for delaying his plans, and lays open a can of whoop-ass on her. Needless to say, she does not make it. He takes under consideration Magnus' suggestion to march his troops that are on the west of the city around back to the forest to attack from the east, which would put them directly in our path to get hit, to instigate a conflict with the demons. I still can't remember what his second wish was, though. That is going to bug me. It'll come up, I'm sure. But it was generally all magnificent Tigard bastardry at its finest. As he basically gets to screw everyone over for his own glory, but at least this time he's only screwing over the purely evil creatures. So it works out. We hope it'll work out. That remains to be seen. Essentially, as we close on this game, the remaining elements of our army have come in sight of the Duntier forests, where alarms are being raised and airships are starting to take off. And the Nightmare, we've had actually slowed down enough for the Nightmare Hound to continue to grind after us as it plods along, devouring hordes of demons before it and driving them into the forest. And as the alarms were raised, Magnus went back down to see Baraxis to see if he had made a decision, to find him absent. But his pit fiend bodyguards were there, and quite displeased with Magnus' attitude, tells him to get lost. Magnus turns to leave, and they cast hold person on him, declaring that his soul will make them stronger even than Baraxis. So a good cliffhanger there. Like I said, not a lot of PC action going on. Magnus got the lion's share of that. The rest of it was a little bit of rough planning. Kosh had a brief fight before retreating from the River Rock. The rest of it was all of tactical movement, which again we're dealing with. I think there's something along the lines of 9,000 troops on our side, plus an uncountable number of demons. That, again, no sane DM would really want to do that. on a PC level scale. We're assuming there was much gore and slaughter and glory for old Raccoon in that fight. And next time we should get to engage the devils and see if this hair-baked plan of ours actually succeeds in getting the two sides back to fighting each other and break the siege on Whiterush and, save the world and all that jazz. And figure out how to keep Magnus Tigard from selling his soul for this. Hey, perfect timing. My pizza just finished. I can't recall any other details, which I'm sure there's plenty I've forgotten. So until next time, game on.